redemption story could be brewing. Maybe not redemption, but as the Gen Zers like to call, a clapback for Notre Dame this week. You got to clap back, Joe. You said it earlier. You literally said it earlier. I can't believe Lou Holtz clapped back at Ryan Day.
Did I didn't realize that that word came out of my mouth, and maybe I am younger than I think I am. Continue.
You are. You're hipper than you think you are, Jay-Z. Here's the thing about Duke and Notre Dame. Why I do think I agree with you that this game could get out of hand a little bit late, not early. I think Notre Dame is pissed. Look, I don't have to talk X's and O's. I think Notre Dame is pissed off. They have something that they need to prove. Going to North Carolina, going to Duke can do that to shut people up around them. But if you do want to get into it, Joe, Duke, we look at them when they went against Clemson, and we do this when teams that come out of nowhere that you're not really expecting to be great or good or really good. Like Duke has been down for so long, so when they beat Clemson week 1, everybody freaks out because it's on a Monday night. It's a standalone game. They're now undefeated going into this game. College game day will be there this week. I don't think it matters. The perception is defensively they are elite. Like I've heard that word a couple times. Well, they have been in scoring defense. Let me tell you what's interesting about Duke. They are 4th in the country in scoring defense. But in between the 20s, they are one of the worst teams in the country at giving up first downs, third down conversions. Joe, they are 95th in the country in third down conversions. There is a part of me that thinks that Notre Dame's going to march off in here and really put it on to the Dukies. But this is what I want to see. Mississippi State a couple of weeks ago played LSU and did not open up at all and tried to run the football a lot against a team that you're probably not going to be able to run the football long consistently. Last week against South Carolina, they threw the ball 48 times. I don't want to see this BS from Notre Dame. It's Notre Dame football. I want to see you go in there with your bearded Jesus that you called Sam Hartman and let him let it rip. You remember when Russell Wilson was in Seattle and they used to say, let Russ cook? Let Sam cook. I'm serious. Let him go. Joe, if you walk out of there and he doesn't have 35 passing attempts, you're doing everything that the book and analytics tells you not to do. I know you got to get Estime involved. I know you got to get this running game involved. Let Sam Hartman get cooking before you get to USC in a couple of weeks. What says you?
So to hit on first, the Notre Dame passing attack, that's what I want to see from them in this game, regardless of score. I want to see them open things up. Allow your star quarterback, the guy that's been in the Dove commercials, got the Beats by Dre sponsorship, all this stuff, let him throw the ball 30 times. Even if you're up big, just keep throwing the ball. We need to start getting a feel for this offense.
At least in between the 20s, right?
Yeah,
at least let him move the football.
You know what I found really interesting that I found out? They're actually 16th in the country in yards per reception. They're actually one of the most explosive offenses in the country. They're just not throwing the ball that much. They're one of the lowest frequencies of offenses to throw the football. They've got everything to work. They're just not doing it. Jared Parker needs to be more aggressive, but to lean into where I think this game is going to play out, I think that they're pissed off that they're going to come in and do whatever they can to prove everybody wrong that might still be downing them, to take all their frustrations out on Duke. I look back at the Clemson game that you talked about and you brought up. That was a good win for Duke, but it was a little bit of a fluky one as well. And what I mean by that is that they took advantage of a lot of silly mistakes made by Cade Klubnik in that Clemson offense that set them up to win that game 28-7. Despite that being that lopsided, they still gave up over 200 yards rushing. Notre Dame has one of the best rushing offenses in the country. They're going to show up in this game. They're going to get the running backs involved early. They're going to rotate Jeremiah Love, Audric Estime, all those guys in. They're going to run for big chunk plays. They're going to be able to throw the ball a little bit better once things start to open up. I really do think that this game should be lopsided. If this game for Notre Dame isn't a 2-score plus victory, that is a lack of aggressiveness on Notre Dame's part, and them failing to take advantage of this opportunity for them. They need to win by more than 2 scores.
I think this game comes down to one thing, maybe not one thing, but I think it's one of the bigger things in this. Duke is not good at red zone defense. They are elite. They have been elite all year. Joe, there's a reason why they're the 4th scoring defense in the country. It's because when they get close, 35, 30-yard line, you start getting into the red zone, they lock down. Now,
how much is that number inflated because of the silly red zone mistakes that Clemson made?
So let me ask you this. How silly is it? Because if I went back and watched that,
what if wasn't one of them like a fumbled exchange or snap or something by Klubnik?
Yeah, but regardless, they had to go for it on 4th down multiple times in the red zone. They stopped them all 3 downs. I think they had 4th and goal from the 7. Like, they kept pushing them back. And it's I would agree with you, it being fluky, Joe, if it hadn't happened every single week since then. Right? Like, if it would be just Clemson, I would say, okay, yeah, sure. That might be a little fluky. But, Joe, when it happens everywhere else, then what?
Well, they've also played UConn and Northwestern in this span. So it's all I'm saying is I think that Duke is an underrated team and they're really good defensively because Elko is a fantastic coach. And this is why Notre Dame, like, this needs to be emphasized. I'm sitting here saying that Notre Dame needs to beat the crap out of them, but they can't overlook them. They can't show up to this game thinking this is Duke. We're gonna blow past them. This is a basketball school. I just think, though, we have to take everything from Duke with a grain of salt because of who they've played so far. They've looked good in spots. I just don't know how impressed I am. You know, that's what I'm getting at.
Well, there's the flip side. This can be another statement game for Duke. And the interesting thing about this is, Joe, I do think that there's a path for them to pull the upset. Even though I know that you don't want to hear it, I'm going to say the same thing tonight on this show and on my show about Ole Miss pulling an upset against LSU in Oxford. I just think that Duke is a really tough team. And look, Riley Leonard, I mean, look, man, he's not easy to slow down. Now, can they because they're more athletic? Yeah. I do think that Notre Dame's defense is legit. I do think they're a really good defense. But, man, if they can't keep contain on him, they're going to get eaten alive. If I'm Duke, I'm trying to keep this game as low scoring as possible at home. Joe, they sold out against Clemson. Like, their stadium was sold out against Clemson in week 1 on a Monday. And that place, if you remember that Monday night game, that place got loud. Like, yeah. I was kind of like, damn, like, this is they're for real in reference to wanting them to win. Anyway, that it's got to be like Duke has got to keep the game a lot like it was last week, right? Like, they got to keep it 17-14, 20-17. They can't start getting in somewhat of what would be a shootout, considered that both teams want to run the football. If this game is close, Joe, if Notre Dame lets them stay around, I'm just going to tell you, Duke going to find a way. Now, let me ask you this. Mike Elko, you think that he can pull out some punches knowing the Notre Dame, maybe he recruited some of these kids and I think he's – he didn't really recruit him because he's been gone for a while.
I think he's so far removed. If anything, Elko would have an edge if Duke was playing LSU because he'd maybe be able to figure out some of the Brian Kelly wrinkles and whatnot. But I will say, though, that Mike Elko is a really strong defensive coach. So, again, that's to my point of you can't overlook an opponent like this because of Riley Leonard and because of Mike Elko to know that they're going to give you their best shot. They are fighting for relevance in the ACC as we're sitting here talking so much about Florida State and Miami on this show. They want to be in that discussion. They want to be in that conversation at the top of the conference. I think you bring up a really good point where if this game does end up being close, that could serve as dangerous for Notre Dame because Riley Leonard, which we saw against Clemson, is hard to contain. That Clemson secondary had no issues holding down that Duke receiving room because they don't really have any good receivers.
So they only have
tight
one
ends.
blue chip. They only have one blue chip recruit.
It's a bunch of nobodies, admittedly. And Riley Leonard didn't have anybody to throw to, but he killed them with his legs because he's a great athlete. He can expand the pocket. He can do a lot of really nice stuff. So that's where I agree with you, is that if Notre Dame comes out slow and lethargic, maybe they're just so run down after the Ohio State game that they're just in their own head, whatever it might be. That is where I will start to get worried. If this is halftime and it's a one-score game, I'm going to be worried because Riley Leonard's that type of guy that comes out at halftime, starts running all over the place, start causing problems. And historically, for whatever reason, guys like him have caused problems for Notre Dame, and it has been in my nightmares as my time growing up as a Notre Dame fan.
See, here's an interesting thing, too, about this game that I don't think that people will think about, but if it is a close-scoring game, that means that Marcus Freeman has learned nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning, like, that would be – Joe, if they win by 10, I'm going to come out of that game saying to myself, look, man, he hadn't learned a damn thing about what he needs to do.
It just depends how that 10 points is. If there's like a garbage, if there's a garbage time touchdown at the end of the game, like Oregon State, Washington, come on now.
BS, because you can't. I keep hearing everybody and their mama doing it for SEC teams. Oh, Alabama only beat them, Ole Miss, and they had, we talk about Alabama. We talk about all Georgia's look lethargic. They only could beat South Carolina by 14. You got people wanting to take them out because they only beat a South Carolina team by 14. So there comes a point, Joe, that you got to start saying, all right, man, all right. And you know what else they'll tell me? I don't think you have enough dudes in that offensive room that can beat USC and keep up with them. That's what it will tell me.
Okay. I'm going to ignore that point.
But Joe, if you go back-to-back weeks against Power 5 opponents that are in the top 20 and you can't separate from a team like Duke, you cannot tell me that you wouldn't be worried going against USC. You can't tell me that.
I don't disagree with that. I think that there would be some fear that gets thrown into the mix because of a lack of aggressiveness. I also think that there is a possibility to still win this game and not feel negative about it if it's close, because it was a total energy drain to lose the way that you did against Ohio State. Okay. Sometimes you come back from those games and you're just dead. You're just completely dead. I will say, though, that this game, maybe I don't get any agreements from people on this one. This game reminds me of when Notre Dame played Syracuse last year, and I believe Syracuse was ranked. Notre Dame was coming off of their loss against Stanford. They beat UNLV, and they went and traveled to Syracuse. And there was all this talk of, well, Syracuse is really underrated. They've looked really, really good. They've got Sean Tucker, who's phenomenal. And they blew the doors off of them. It was 41-24, and that was with freaking Drew Pine. So I think that is the type of game that you got to be looking for here, is that if you want to recover, take it out on somebody that deserves to be ranked, but your head's above. They are a much better, more developed program than Duke, and they need to take all of their goddamn frustration out on them like they did against Syracuse.
I think you're talking about a Notre Dame game and say GD.
I don't know, man. Am I not allowed to? I'm allowed to say goddamn.
Touchdown Jesus is going to strike you, and Notre Dame's only winning by 10.